Any questions about that process? No questions?
Is a unit a second on them? Is that units rather than a terminal grid?
It's going to depend on, a light unit is when you put a new bulb in, and I usually like to set the times up because you can calibrate the photocell eye that is in the unit. The photocell tells through the integrator to the light source how long it needs to expose, and you can adjust those. So what I like to do is when I put a new bulb in, adjust the photocell eye so it's per second of a light unit. So on my watch, when I put a new one in, I like to kind of put it on a 60-second timeline so I can adjust the photocell to understand what that is. When a bulb starts to get old, that time's going to extend. And to kind of keep track of it, you go back on your watch and shoot one 4 or 5 months down the line at 60 seconds. If it starts to go to closer to 90 seconds on your watch, then you know your bulb's getting worn out and it's probably time to change the bulb. Especially with exposure units, you don't want to wait till they burn out before you go to change it. The important thing is that you're getting proper exposure all the time, and that just by putting the new bulb in and kind of calibrating it to your watch, now you've got a verification point to where you can go back and really see whether you've got getting proper exposure or not. And 9 times out of 10, when I go into shops to do an emulsion demo or train people, they haven't changed their bulb in a year or 2 years. And I'm talking big production shops, guys that have 4 or 5 automatics, and because it's one of the last things they think about. They're so busy with everything else, they've forgotten that one of the key points to making proper screens isn't being, maintained and kept up with. And that's a very important thing to do.
How do you judge it
on like fluorescence?
Yeah.
That's going to be more on how many shots you've done. And that's going to be, the timeline. And I'm not sure, Ryan knows what the timeline is on the exposure of those bulbs.
So if I use one, I should just change the bulbs?
Yes, I would start fresh so you know where you're at. And you can see this one's much softer. From the underexposure. And what you can see is if you look at this area right across the top here, see these little shadow boxes that are in here? Those are different density levels. So what I like to do is, this is normal film here. This is about 20% more density, 50% more density, 60% more density, 80, and I think 85. And what happens is you can see that this one is more soft. The dots will rub off. It doesn't stand up to abrasion or anything. Okay. Whereas down in here, this is normal film, and the emulsion's a little tougher. Even though we're still underexposed, what I was trying to show you is we were 100 points different on the exposure unit, and we still got this to develop. Even though it's soft, we're in the low end of that window I talked about, you still are getting a screen. And that's the difference between photopolymer and dual cure, is we have latitude, which is what that is. When emulsion has latitude, that's the difference. We can go 100 point different on an exposure and still get it to develop. Even though it's tacky, it's sticky, it's in the low end of the window, we want to be more to the higher end of the window so that we're getting a harder, tougher screen, so that we're going to print and have longevity on press and not have breakdowns or dot loss or problems like that.
So the other stuff, I've noticed, 2, 3, 4 seconds makes a big difference.
Yeah.
This one.
No, no. With that, it's such a short window. You're talking maybe 20-point variance, possibly as a window from under to over. Whereas this product, we just did 100, and you see that there's that much in the window. So, questions? And when you see, you can just, a lot of it you can just feel. You don't even have to look at an exposure calculator. You can feel that it's tacky and sticky, and yeah, and that's one of the things, just a telltale kind of thing. If you want to really define it, yeah, you can go to an exposure calculator. You can see the different densities, and then one of the things you start to look at, and you guys can grab the screen, is in these dot patterns here where you've got your negative halftones that are like a 10% or a 5%, 20% type halftone. What you want to look at is when you're getting proper exposure and you're moving this window further out to maybe about here, you want to make sure these don't start to close up. And that's how you're really looking at your product. So
Explain film density just a little bit more. Is that
sure.
What's coming out of the printer on the film?
No, in a test, in a exposure calculator like this is, it's got 5 different film densities on there. As you can see by the softer colors that are here, the different, and the density gives you a range,
Like
so
the
that
thickness of the actual film,
or just the shade of it.
or the shade of it.
Yeah, that it's a deeper, blacker type
Okay,
denser.
that's it. Yeah.
And this is less dense.
Yeah.
Whereas this is maybe a, in film densities, which is a whole nother beast, you want to be at about a hardness of a 7, 7.5 on a densitometer, and that's about where that film is. These are lesser densities across. And density of film has a lot to do with, as you can see, how the dots will transfer to the film. So that's like where vellum off an inkjet has more density, about like a 60% dot, whereas like an Epson with a really dark dense type color, that's more closer to 100%. Questions about that or anything? Any